Welcome to the Tending Your Open Source Gardens track for today. It's my pleasure to introduce our three speakers for this talk. We're going to talk about contributor experience: Melissa Mendonça, Inessa Pawson, and Noah Tamir. Let's give them a warm welcome.
Hi, everyone. I'm Inessa. I'm super excited to be here. I'm curious how many people in the room are attending SciPy for the first time. Welcome. This is my fifth SciPy, and coming to this conference in 2019 has changed the entire course of my professional career, for the better. I hope this conference will do the same for you. So here's the plan for the next 20 minutes. As the title of our presentation suggests, we're on the stage to talk about the importance of contributor experience. To help us have a shared language, first, I will talk about what it means in theory and practice. Then Noah and I will share insights from the work of the Contributor Experience Lead team with the communities of 4 foundational libraries: NumPy, SciPy, Matplotlib, and pandas, and discuss why designing and providing positive contributor experience is vital to sustainability of each individual project and the SciPy ecosystem overall. To close, Melissa will share her perspective on our work for the past 18 months, how this work could be applied to other projects, and how you can get involved to improve contributor experience in your projects in the wider ecosystem. Behind every successful open source project is a strong contributor community. Yes, software must provide solutions. Ideally, should be a useful piece in a larger solution to a larger problem, a part of a tool chain. However, it's the people, the community, the culture of the community that determine the longevity of an open source project. And when we talk about the culture of any given open source community, what we really mean is the sum of values, hopefully all documented as policies and guidelines, technical infrastructure, and social infrastructure, which serve as glue in onboarding and supporting contributors to an open source community. In practice, for an open source project to have a good culture means designing and providing positive contributor experience. The emerging field of open source contributor experience examines how policies, processes, and tools affect volunteer contributors' ability to collaborate on an open source project, and aims to develop best practices for creating positive contributor experience, nurturing great community culture, and ultimately supporting growth and sustainability of open source projects. Engaging and supporting contributors requires specialized knowledge, experience, and time commitment from project leaders. In this slide, we've captured most of the skills that we have to apply in our roles as contributor experience leads. And as you can see, project maintenance isn't all about code. Since I started in my role as a contributor experience lead for NumPy, quite a few people have asked me if contributor experience should be top of mind for every open source project. Truth be told, if you don't wish to be the only person supporting the project, if you care about its longevity and sustainability, you need to do this work. You need to empower others, and not only by sharing responsibilities, but also by sharing the decision-making power. Contributor experience work is about creating opportunities for others to thrive within your project. As I mentioned earlier, engaging and supporting contributors requires specialized knowledge, experience, and time commitment from project leaders. However, a chronic lack of resources and time often inhibits them to focus on this work. Recognizing these challenges, in late 2021, we created a team of contributor experience leads to support contributors to the 4 foundational libraries in the scientific Python ecosystem: NumPy, SciPy, Matplotlib, and pandas. Our work is supported by a grant from the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative. And in the next part of this presentation, we will share our insights from doing this work for the past 18 months. Please keep in mind that the 4 libraries that our team is working on are quite different in terms of the contributor community makeup, governance models, policies, and therefore priorities when it comes to contributor support. Creating a welcoming to newcomers culture is vital to growth and sustainability of any open source project. A great part of our work days is spent on supporting newcomers. There is a lot to learn. We develop and maintain technical documentation in a variety of formats: doc streams, contributor guidelines, tutorials in Jupyter books, YouTube videos, and even comics. Asking questions on GitHub in the open is pretty intimidating at first. To create safe space for our newcomers to ask questions about contributing to our projects, we host regular newcomers hours, pair programming sessions, and newcomer sprints. We also have dedicated communication channels in each project. We try our very best to provide a timely review of PRs from new contributors. To streamline the process, we set up GitHub projects to monitor progress on such PRs. Under the hood, our projects are pretty complex. Building a development environment on a local machine isn't trivial, especially on Windows. It gets even more interesting if you need to keep an older version of the same software for your work or research project. And also, let's not forget that in some parts of the world, people don't have access to the latest or powerful technologies. To make the first contribution less frustrating, we set up Gitpod and GitHub code spaces. And I must admit, these tools are lifesavers during virtual newcomer sprints.
Another key part of contributor experience is the core team's experience. We worked really closely with our projects, building relationships, learning their unique cultures, and taking some actions. We were happy to get involved with onboarding new maintainers. Some places had some process, some of those were not documented, different situations at different projects. We were also trying to support our maintainers through feedback, introducing communication methods and tools, coaching and mediation. Some of these tools, if you're not sure what methods and communications are things like writing and documenting saved replies for the whole project, and preparing structured and debiasing communication templates for meetings and other interactions. We also partnered with maintainers to empower and affect change. That means working directly with individuals who need support to gain momentum within a project, to build consensus, to socialize decision-making processes. We also were very fortunate to welcome some of our maintainers to the CL project itself and onboarding them to CL work. Some more, some sporadically, but this was all great for us to see how more of folks who weren't doing CL work before are adopting it themselves. We also worked in general to promote civility and cultivate awareness for inclusive open communication. While a grant is for 2 years and almost over, we know that long-term impact for our projects was key to structural DEI change. We have been taking an active role in governance and policy making in our project. So why us? Most of us were relatively new contributors ourselves in our communities. We had 2 reasons to take up this work. One was with aim to represent minorities within our communities and consider how policies serve not only the status quo, but also inclusion and change that will enable others. The second one is that we wanted to create new pathways for projects membership that expand what was often only 1 or 2 ways to join. This promotes inclusion, diversity, and sustainability. As our projects grew, there was more to do and larger community to cultivate and maintain beyond the core code. We wanted to create a space for people to take different roles. NumPy now has 2 new lead organizers of documentation. SciPy added Melissa after several community and documentation contributions, and I very recently joined pandas after a year of CEL contributions. Why is this hard? Well, doing this work is hard for many reasons. I'd like to list 3. One, we're implicated. Trying to make change also means asking for change for our own work. It can cause serious imposter syndrome. It can make us shy away from taking up space, for feeling self-involved, and for advocating for ourselves. The second reason is that we don't necessarily know the right way or the right change the projects need, and we're also new. We can only suggest, try, and hope that progress will follow. And the third one is that navigating these undocumented project structures and cultures, understanding implicit norms can be very challenging and takes time. It took us quite a long time to get to know our projects before we could even try to affect change in that way. That said, we did some work and we still have a dream moving forward, which is moving away from folks having a mindset of we support DEI, but who can do it or how can it be done? Sometimes sounding a bit skeptic to kind of more proud and achievement progress-oriented mindset. Could be something like, could we be the first project in our ecosystem to achieve a DEI goal, or even have people be excited about who has the most diverse leadership group? So that's where we would like to get. Luckily, some of our work is easily spotted on GitHub and communication channels of these projects. Melissa will tell you later how you can learn more about our invisible work. But here are some case studies and highlights from these 4 projects, as well as others like Chaos Project and Scientific Python, where we're also involved. Our policy ranges from governance changes, our policy work ranges from governance changes, introduction of new policies, and updates to contributor and maintainer documentation. We also held regular contributor community meetings. They are now available in all of these projects. We sometimes host special sessions. We sometimes share recordings online to reach more folks. And you can find these open meeting calendars on Scientific Python and our community documentation, which we think is great. You can also, we organize a bunch of new contributors sprints. Some were fully remote, some are on site. We partner with different organizations and with different events, things like Grace Hopper celebrations, PyData conferences, collaboration with PyLadies chapters, and I think there's even one video on Data Umbrella from one of our maintainers, if not more. Would you like to if you would like to get started with doing this type of work, so first, these actions you can very easily find online, and you could do this in your own projects. You can start or join a new contributor meeting. You can make meeting templates to provide consistent and inclusive community experiences, and you can collaborate with others and consider how you can enable other people's work. Let's take a moment to talk about working with allies. Black and white thinking is incredibly common when it comes to receiving feedback. It can be very hard to hear something negative that implicates you and then decenter yourself from that. This is key to doing CEL work. And the more negative emotion is a part of doing DEI work, the harder it will be to sustain it long term for everybody involved. We've not encountered anyone who is outright against raising DEI standards. But what's common is that I'm for it, but I don't know what can be done, like I said earlier, or people who are actively trying to take actions, but then don't have the perspective to see why these actions could be problematic to other individuals. If you seek to do this work, I can suggest one thing to you. Approach everyone with empathy and avoid anything that could be received as blame or accusation. There's fear and uncertainty within a lot of privileged and empowered folks, and those who want to achieve DEI goals as well. If you simply point out things that you think can easily be changed or are wrong or you think could benefit from improvement, you may actually hurt your allies and maybe make them believe that they don't want to do this anymore. When you approach them with empathy, if you avoid blame and you seek to work together to achieve goals, you will have a lot more impact. And I don't know anyone who can consider how their actions affect all individuals across all intersectionalities.
So let's talk also a little bit about the challenges of this work. I know that we have outlined a few over the past few slides, but we would like to focus on a few specifics here. Hedgehogs are regarded as very cute, but they are also very challenging creatures to take care of. And that can also be true for DEI work. It is often thought of as something nice and cute to have and to show, but it takes real effort to cultivate. This kind of work can be very delicate and challenging, and often it is also quite painful. But this is not optional. We cannot choose to not take care of this. Still, when it comes to concrete action, going beyond the basics of DI is challenging. To try and identify priorities and areas where we could work on, we partnered with May Ireland, who's our external DEI consultant, and helped us create a DEI insights report that is public and lists 3 main areas that we want to work on. First is code of conduct and conflict resolution. Second is communications, and third is contribution or career pathways, meaning that we would like to have different modes of contribution available, including clarifying which modes would lead to leadership positions within the projects that we work on, and how. Of these 3, we have started work on what we are calling culture labs for the code of conduct area, brainstorming with folks from different projects on how the code of conduct infrastructure for our projects is organized and how it could be improved. These are open discussions where we don't really expect to have full solutions to these problems, but rather share thoughts and experiences that could then be taken by each project and they can work on themselves. All of this contributor experience work takes real engagement and buy-in from project leadership. Part of the sustainability effort is to make this work possible in the long term, meaning that we want to have other people also step up and do similar work. When our grant runs out, we want to make sure that this work can be supported by our volunteers as well, and that starts with leadership, which is why the buy-in is important. And then, of course, there are metrics. So how do we know any of this is working, or how do we even evaluate project health? How do we do that? Metrics and impact are not easy to define. So if you were at Amanda's amazing talk yesterday about measuring and doing research on open source projects, or if you were at today's diversity luncheon by Sofia Vargas, you know how tricky this can be. To help us understand the current landscape and existing work done in this area, we have connected with the CHAOS project and are working to understand which metrics we could use beyond existing ones to analyze project health. And if you cannot tell from the slide, what we're trying to highlight is that the green squares on GitHub don't often represent the full extent of the work that we do. There's a lot more that goes on behind the scenes and doesn't get captured. And so creating and evaluating, defining your metrics over GitHub often gives you an incomplete picture that can be seductive, but is not true of the project you want to measure. All of this is ongoing work, and our grant goes through through August, and we won't be done by then, of course. We could never hope to fix everything in 2 years. But we did learn a lot from our experiences with the projects and the things that we were able and not able to achieve. This conversation is also larger than the Python community, and the solutions won't be the same for everyone and every project. This is why we are hoping to connect with other communities and contributors and plan on working on our contributor experience project. This is an open community project dedicated to contributor culture and frameworks development in open source. Our goal is to provide a space to reflect, engage, and offer advancements in the work of effective transfer of knowledge, contributor hospitality techniques, project leadership, and communication infrastructure. We want to both connect with other folks working in similar positions in other open source projects, and also create resources specific to contributor experience work in general. The resources collected by this contributor experience community are added to our handbook, which is being developed collectively and accepting contributions. So if you are interested, this is a handbook for maintainers and community members who may want to dedicate some time to contributor experience but maybe don't know how to start. We are super aware that this kind of work is not usually what attracts people to open source projects, where they often want to focus on code. So we need to intentionally seek to create these pathways for contributors who want to work in community and contributor experience, and try to depersonalize the work as much as possible by creating documentation and guidance for those who want to follow, so that this becomes a sustainable practice. You can point your camera to the QR code and you can reach our contributor experience website, which is contributor-experience.org. Of course, all of this is collective effort, and it takes a real village to support this role. Money is helpful and has supported our positions for a while, but without buy-in from project leadership and our communities, none of this would have been possible. So I wanted to say personally, but also from the group, thank you to the people who have been supporting this work throughout the length of the project. First of all, Pamphile Roy and Marco Gorelli. Pamphile is over there. They've recently joined part-time as also CELs, so contributor experience leads, and are also doing part of this work. We also want to thank the mentors from each project who supported us in the initial proposal and throughout the project. Hannah Eisenman, Thomas Caswell, Joris Vandenbos, Ralph Gommers, and Matt Haberlin, who's also sitting over there. And we would also like to thank May Ireland, our external DEI consultant, who helped us figure out a lot of things that we chose as priorities to work on. And just in general, we want to thank our maintainers, contributors, newcomers, the community members, everyone who gave input and participated in our initiative. And we're happy to see this continue, hopefully, and the project moving forward. So if you want to take part in the culture labs, these conversations that we are setting up, or if you want to talk about how to do contributor experience work in your project, or if you just want to chat about any of the topics that we mentioned here, we do have a Zulip chat space that you can join if you point your QR code to that image. If you point your camera to the QR code. Or you can just type the URL on your address bar and you reach that. Yeah, that's the invitation, is to have an open conversation about it, and we're happy to chat. So thank you so much, and thank you to my co-speakers as well.
Thank you for the interesting talk, and thanks on behalf of the community, if I can take that liberty, for the important work that you've been doing. We're happy to take questions from in the room. If you have a question, come on up to Benoit, and we'll let you ask the question. You can also put questions in Slack.
I happen to have a question. So many open source development communities are not geographically co-located. So all of the communication has to happen on various chat channels, perhaps sometimes FaceTime or video conference, things like that. And very often when there are conflicts arising in those communities, there seems to be a lot of very attractive failure modes to the conversations going on these chats. They are entertainment worthy sometimes. They're so cringe. So how do you have any concrete advice on the mindset to take for community leaders to direct their communities through conflict resolution?
I think, I dare say this is human nature. I think communicating through text is not our basic mode of communication. It is difficult. It is very difficult to infer intent. It is very difficult to understand context. And on top of that, there's something else that you didn't mention, but people come from different cultural backgrounds, from different languages, and things can very quickly break down when you don't have a common pattern of communication. So I think that is general and happens in every project, in every community, in every group. I would say it is difficult sometimes to remove your own baggage from the conversation, but I would say it starts from there. and trying to see things through the, basics and facts instead of bringing your own assumptions to the conversation, but I think it's a lot more complex than that. I don't know that I have any specific advice for you, but I think just to say that I sympathize because yes, it happens everywhere.
So if I
Do you
understand
wanna
correctly,
continue?
it kind of starts from self-awareness and owning that you're probably the one bringing the bullshit in.
I would say it's partly that, but like Liz just said, it's very hard to decenter yourself sometimes, or to not think, to see this from the outside if you're engaged and emotionally engaged. I think one of the things that would be nice to see is more of the leaderships groups kind of co-own this. If you see someone else falling into that, can you provide feedback? Do you know how, because maybe you know each other a bit better than folks out there who are just sitting and eating popcorn. So that's one thing, to kind of try to see how as a group you can facilitate and give feedback. And if you don't feel comfortable, if you don't yet have that feedback culture, then what could be nice to see in more of our projects is active code of conduct policy being enforced, and not for major breakdowns, but for small mediation, for small nudges. If you have an external group of folks who can come and say, look, we know that you're working very hard and you're very, very involved, but are you aware that this also looks in this way, and would you mind tuning it down? I think that would be really great.
So I have a technical question about this Zulip chat, because when I click on that, there is an information that I need to have an invitation. So maybe other
We
people
probably
also have
messed
this.
up on the permissions. I'll try to check that out. So if you want an invitation, please let us know on I'm on the Slack for
Okay.
the conference. You can reach out to me and I can make sure to correct that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
I believe we also have a dedicated Slack channel where we can share all the contact info for the Contributor Experience project. So if you're interested to connect with us, please check Slack.
There are a couple of questions from Slack, and I'll wrap those into one, and maybe we'll end there. So I would read them both as invitations to share more, either about any stories of the DEI benefits of your work, or anything about developing these roles and these projects that surprised you.
Maybe not surprise is not the right word, but I do think that in general we've received a lot of support, and we've received a lot of good feedback, especially from the people who are joining now the project, where they do feel like, they feel welcome, they feel respected, they feel like they know where to go to ask questions. So it's not about surprise, but it's interesting, I think, to me, because there are a lot of people, and this is feedback that we get from the newcomers. They do come with a preset notion that open source is hostile, and that they're going to get shouted at, and if they make a mistake, people are going to kick them out. A lot of people come with this mindset. So it is interesting to see that it can actually quickly be broken down if you have some infrastructure to receive newcomers. I'm not going to say it's perfect, because it's not. It's definitely not. There's a lot more things that we could be doing, but I think already that goes a long way. Anything else? Yeah.
One thing that surprised me, I didn't realize the breadth of skills that I'll have to pull out of my toolbox on a daily basis to be efficient and effective in my role as a contributor experience lead. On any given day, I might be reviewing PRs, thinking about governance policies, organizing sprints, reading up on latest papers. It's a lot.
Thank the speakers again. We've got a short break, and we'll resume this track in about 15 minutes.